Wow. Wow, 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 wow. I need RE4 Remake in my hands now. What's up everyone, the Slime Sonic fan here. We need to talk about the Chainsaw demo. For those of you who are somehow out of the loop, a playable demo for RE4 Remake just dropped, allowing us to experience the first few minutes of the game. In those few minutes, nearly every worry I had for this game was eviscerated. Yeah, I was one of many who was skeptical of the idea of RE4 being remade, and even now, I'm still unsure of how I feel about it. Sure, the OG RE4 may have aged a good bit, but I'm still a firm believer that the game was and still is basically flawless, and holds up enough to still be enjoyed by modern gamers. It was so ahead of its time that aside from maybe the controls, there's no way you could tell it was made in 2005 on a GameCube. And even though people like to harp on how restricted the controls in OG RE4 can be, my response is you should get good, kid, because once you get used to them, they're barely noticeable, just like the even more restrictive controls in the main entries that preceded it. Speaking of which, the reason I could understand RE2 and RE3 being remade is because unlike 4, those games are very non-player friendly for today's standards and needed some graphical overhauls if any of us zoomers were going to take the story and characters seriously. What I'm getting at here is that rather than remaking a game for the sole intent of modernizing it and making it user friendly for a new audience, Capcom saw giant money signs and greenlit the project immediately, which is fine by the way. I understand RE4 is the most iconic title and it would be crazy for them money-wise not to give it the remake treatment, but all of this gave me huge reservations for the game. Well, boy oh boy did this demo prove my ass wrong. Starting with visuals, look at the fucking screen. No, look at it. I feel as though I'm the only one who's shocked that every RE game ever made looks visually stunning and ahead of the curve for every console generation they release on. As you can see, they're clearly continuing the trend because, wow. What do you want me to say? I mean, everything looks stunning, performance-wise there was no hiccups, each of the human models have an insane amount of details in their texture, the game is real life. I know I'll look back at this video 10 years from now and laugh as I cuddle my PS7 in my arms capable of photorealistic VR, but for now, damn it, I can't process how good and high-end this demo looks. I've been waiting to play a game that truly pushes my PS5's capabilities, and this looks like that game. Especially the cutscenes. I mean, look at this! They're on par with the CG movies we've been getting. Seriously, this is unreal. One thing I was highly anticipating from this remake is what narrative offerings it'll have, and ho ho ho, whoever is in the writer's chair is cooking. While the gameplay of OG RE4 still holds up really well, as a fan of this series' ongoing narrative, I felt that the original RE4 definitely had the weakest story out of any of the mainline games. Don't get me wrong, I adored its camp and satirical nature, but as a story, it doesn't really grip me like the other games do. It contributes very little to the overall world building aside from the lost Plagueis virus and some slight hints as to what Wesker is up to, and even though a lot of the characters are likable, there's not much to them beyond the surface level. Well, from what I've seen in the demo, I am in for a real treat, guys. This remake is taking the story of the original and completely enhancing it in nearly every aspect. Leon's character is the prime example of this. In the OG, Leon was an awesome protagonist, and it was cool seeing him be a professional after his time as a naive rookie in RE2, but like I mentioned earlier, there wasn't much beyond his surface level aside from occasional glimpses at his idealistic desire to help people. Well, this game has made the clever decision of having the haunting events of Raccoon City traumatize Leon, giving him an extra layer and making him more believable as a character. Not only that, but whereas OG Leon felt like a corny movie star, this one feels like an actual person and uses his quips to lighten the mood of otherwise horrifying situations. I like both versions, but this one seems fitting for the more serious tone this game is sporting, and I'm all for it. And that's just one example of how good this iteration of Leon's trip to rural Spain is looking, with the trailers we've been getting blowing me away. I love both RE2 and RE3 Remake respectively, but those games didn't necessarily improve their stories, but instead focused on making them more cinematic and believable, which I appreciate but unfortunately think was a waste. I am overjoyed that RE4 Remake will be adding to its story. To clarify, I don't mind OG RE4's narrative, but its likable characters and fun dialogue saved its otherwise boring plot. But none of you give a damn about that. How's the gameplay? The actual game part of Resident Evil 4? Well, I saved this part for last because this is the only section in which I have some negatives. Before you bring out your torches and pitchforks and turn to granados yourselves, let me first say that I enjoyed myself. I really did. Starting with the positives, I am freaking out over how much depth has been added to this experience. Weapon upgrading and attachments come back, but now there's ammo crafting, parrying, just so much more. I fully believe that after playing this game, going back to the original will initially feel a little empty with how less complex it is. By the way, quick side note here, I fucking love the Granados in this game. Like the OG, they behave much smarter than your traditional zombies. They can dodge and weave, use weaponry, the full works. But now, once their heads get damaged, there's a chance they'll turn into uncontrollable, super aggressive sprinters, and the only way to prevent their transformation is a double tap with your knife. They're kind of like a more tame version of the Plaga heads, but somehow even more threatening. I don't know, man, just the way the Granados move and look, they're so much more threatening here, and that's great. Also, can we talk about how they added stealth into RE? In full Last of Us style, you can choose to sneak past certain enemies, and doing so will come at the benefit of ammo conservation. This is nothing new to RE, but the way this game does it makes it feel like an actual fleshed out mechanic rather than a byproduct of the game design. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they'll do with this, especially in Ashley's segment. Overall, this demo was a lot of fun, but here's where I have to turn to Negative Nancy. Despite it being fun, from what I played in this demo, this game isn't more fun than the original. Just hear me out. I'm not one of those pretentious fucks you see on this site who claim that everything new is awful and the classics will always be superior. That is not at all the type of YouTuber or even the type of person I am. And I'm not claiming the gameplay of the remake will end up objectively being inferior to the 2005 version or anything insane like that. Look, my number one worry for this game was that in its attempt to be more horror focused and semi-realistic, the devs would tone down the combat-centric action in favor for a more traditional survival horror feel. Well, I was sort of right to be worried. While there's certainly no shortage of combat encounters and number of Granados on screen, the actual feel and controls of the game feels more akin to RE2 and 3 Remake, where hitting enemies is harder to do and the impact of your bullets isn't necessarily as strong or impactful. That wasn't a problem in those games since they were primarily survival horror and each individual encounter with an enemy was meant to be uncertain and intense, but here though, it's just out of place. Say what you will about the controls in the OG, but there, you felt like an absolute powerhouse. Your aim was smooth, each shot felt impactful, and your health wasn't as easily depletable. Here, in the remake, it felt like I was playing a survival horror game that didn't know it was a survival horror game. The difficulty in the village holdout is night and day between the remake and the original, and I think that's just chalked up to how much slower and not as powerful I felt playing this game. This didn't ruin my experience or anything, and it honestly was cool to have the village holdout be super intense and not as chill as it usually is. But this, along with the added stealth segments and emphasis on horror, has me worried that the full game will end up having an identity crisis of sorts where it tries to strike that nice balance the original did between action and horror, but ends up achieving neither. This is not a judgment on the game itself, but rather just a concern that I got from playing the demo. Other than that, RE4 Remake has won me over, and I cannot wait to get my hands on the full game once it releases. Anyways, what did you guys think of the demo? Please let me know in the comments below. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have, then please like, subscribe, and as always, I will see you guys next time. Peace out.